My Gavan and Melanine, and well met indeed. I'm Arakir Galadirthan, the head of Divide and Conquer, and welcome to this question and answer video. Now, a few things to touch upon before we begin. Number one, this video is because I reached 5,000 subscribers, but of course, as many of you know, YouTube did their cleanup. Sorry, let me just turn on my recorder. YouTube did their little cleanup, and I actually lost about 600 subscribers, but then it went up by 400, so it got to about 4,600. When I started taking questions, though, we were at 4,800, and I'm now at... So we went to 4,800 was when I was going to start the questions, 4,850. We lost a load of subscribers. We got 4,600 subscribers is where it's settled upon, and with that we're now at 4,860 odd, so we've gained 260 subscribers, and if we gained 260 subscribers when we were at 4,850, we'd be over 5,000. So here we are, doing a 5,000 subscribers video. So thank you very much for getting me to 5,000. I personally don't watch that many Let's Plays, so don't see particularly the enjoyment, but many of you do, so there we are. Secondly, I'm using Little Blue Ferret's camera, which is currently on the screen. Puts me off very much. I've already done one of these. There was problems with the microphone, had to do it again. So this time I've got the questions on paper. And I don't like the fact that I can see myself, but anyway, that's by the by. Little Blue Ferret's camera is not the most amazing, but as this is going to be one of the few times I ever actually record myself, I'm not too fussed. So the quality may not be amazing, but meh. Once again, I've got Adrian von Ziegler's music in the background, so thank you very much to him. So we can dive in, but before we do, I begin with just where we are. This, as many of you may guess, is just unfortunately my room, as this is where I live. And this is where I do most of the modding for the game, so this is where we are going from. I've got all your questions on paper because I'm a very prepared person, and I'll be reading from them, so I look down every now and then to read the questions, and that's about it. So I will try and look at the camera. I'll probably look around more so than that, but after 1 minute and 48, let's dive in. Question number one. Sorry, you can hear the paper probably, can't you? Oh well, my apologies. I'll leave it over here and I'll just look at it. Question one comes from a person called Halaros, and Halaros asks, how did I come up with my name, and where's my YouTube avatar from? Well, my name is Arakir Galadirthan, which just means High Lord Galadirthan, so High Lord Arakir. It's Ara meaning High, Royal Noble, or Hir meaning Lord, and when they're formed together they become Arahir, with a K, like a Ch, Arahir. And Galadirthan is the translation of my real name, which is Edward. And Edward means royal guard or rich guard, lucky guard, something like that. And Galadirthan is a translation of that. So Arakir Galadirthan, High Lord Galadirthan, or High Lord Edward. My YouTube avatar is just Prince Imrahil. So type in Prince Imrahil and took the first thing that came, and that's all it is. It's just an artist's imitation of Prince Imrahil. Next up is Renz Janssen, who frequents the comments section, and you've asked, what's my opinion of the movies, both Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit? Tricky question. I really like the Lord of the Rings films. I think they're really, really good, but I'm not really taken with The Hobbit. And the Lord of the Rings, I think as standalone films, they're really good. I think their story is good, the characters are good, the actors are good, the portrayal is good. The Hobbit, I think, is a bit boring. The fact that they stretched it out over 3 films really does it in. That's a nail in the coffin, and I don't think it's as enjoyable as The Lord of the Rings. I'm not too bothered about the lore breaks in The Lord of the Rings. I think most of them are done well. Most of them are done for a good reason. So I'm all for them. Tick to the lore changes, like things like swapping out Glorfindel because it just adds an unnecessary character. He doesn't have much to do in the books. Why bother paying someone to play him? Things like that, I think they're good. But The Hobbit, I think, takes too many liberties because it's just too long. It is just too long. So 2 films, it probably could have been better. 3 films, I don't really like it. So I like The Lord of the Rings. I'm not a fan of The Hobbit as a film. Next up is Larry Weil. Don't know how to pronounce your name. If I could ask Tolkien anything, what would I ask him? The number one thing I would ask Tolkien is, what is the real pronunciation of Sindarin? What does he think it sounds like in his head? There's lots of guides, there's lots of, like, it should sound like this, it's meant to sound like this, but I would quite like to ask Tolkien himself, how exactly do you say this, or this? And to get what he really feels like it should sound like. That is what I would want to know. So that would be my question to Tolkien. How the bloody hell do you say Sindarin properly? My minor apology, if there's a minor dissync between my mouth and the sound, then I apologise. It'll be like a split of a second, just kind of look at me for a second, be like, oh, that's what Gallu looks like, have a little look at my bookcase, and then just listen, I suppose, is your best bet. Next up is the King Cobra. How long do I think Divide and Conquer will last in terms of updates, fixes, add-ons and whatnot, and the team? Tricky question. Divide and Conquer has been going for, I think, 5-6 years. Let's go with 6. 6 years, I think, and in that time it's had a lot of leaders, a lot of members, a hell of a lot of members, and like Third Age Total War itself, it kind of dwindled out when the bulk of the team left, and I can't see Divide and Conquer going much further after Hummingbird and I leave. There's not really anyone to pass the torch to. Calatharok is currently doing the scripting, and that's incredibly good and useful, obviously. It'd be a little bit of time before he'd want to take on the whole project on his own, and I don't know how much longer I'd go. Like, there's a question later on talking about what I do, and leading into that, it depends how long I'd want to do it for. I'm not sure how long Hummingbird would want to lead once he takes over, because unless he leaves before me, I'll pass it on to him once I'm done with it. I can't see Divide and Conquer lasting beyond the current team, basically. I think we will see it out to the end, and then that will be it. That will be the final version. Oh, is the cursor on the screen? Bet it blooming is, isn't it? And if the things are as well. I'm using the camera, and then I'm using NVIDIA to record the camera, so if they're on the screen, then I can only apologise. It doesn't really detract that much, does it? I'm using the camera app and then NVIDIA because it's better than using OBS using the camera itself, so if they are there, I don't know if you can see them, but just here there's a little circle, and just here there's a little circle, and just here there's a little left arrow, but ignore them if they're there. Thank God. Next up is Albert Brions, who asks many questions and comments a lot. And Albert asks, why do I argue so much about dwarves riding rams, and if I look at the extended version of the film, I'll see a bit where there are ram chariots. Dwarven rams. Let's just finish this once and for all, shall we? The dwarves are said to not like riding to war on anything other than their own 2 feet. So Gimli says this in the book. And so they're unlikely to ride on anything. We know they ride on ponies because of the Hobbit. The Hobbit says expressly that they ride there on ponies. They've got ponies. But rams is a massive stretch for one key reason. Ask yourself this: why do humans in our lifetime, in our reality, not ride rams? And the answer is because rams can't support a human being in full battle regalia charging to war. They can't support them. They would not be able to support a dwarf either. Dwarves are short, sturdy, but very weighty, very heavy, and in full plate or chainmail even, they would not be able to support them. So not only does it come from the fact that the dwarves wouldn't ride them, it also comes from the fact that the chariots, or not the chariots, the rams wouldn't take the dwarves' weight. So that's why we don't use them. But also from a DAC point of view, we don't use them because the dwarves' key weakness is they don't have good access to cavalry, and you have to get around it with the Dale mercenaries or artillery. And if we added direct express dwarven catapults, or dwarven cavalry, sorry, then that would completely destroy the need of having the catapults, having the mercenaries, and the dwarves would have no weaknesses. And the only faction where we've kind of just gone, ugh, the faction's easy, get over it, is the elves. So if you play as the elves, they're easy. Sorry, there's no way around it. Their units are too good, there's no way to make them hard. But the dwarves, we can still at least make you chase down all those annoying skirmishers. Next question comes from Scotty King. Are we planning on still doing the 2 Blue Wizards script? And the answer is kind of no. Now that Khand is involved in the Southern Theatre with Gondor and Harad, there's no real need to have them rise up against Mordor. A player can just do that on their own anyway, and Khand as the AI now fights Gondor, so there's no real need to have them backstab Mordor, so no, not really. Malcolm Shepherd, Shepherd of Numenor, asks, in version 1, which factions are going to be able to recruit units from other factions that share common bloodlines? And the answer is the Northern Dunedain can train all humans. Umbar can enslave most human factions. That's about it. So if you play as those factions, you can get others, but most of the other factions don't have any crossovers, because the crossover units end up plugging weaknesses, like with Ennard Wyth and Dunland. When you unite Dunland or Ennard Wyth, you get units from the other faction. And they plug holes, and if you get the holes plugged in every faction, then you have no more weaknesses, and we want them to have weaknesses, so there aren't that many shared units. Gondor and Dol Amroth do get a few of each other's, but nothing major. Nothing major. It's just to signify you get a little bit of a change. Bonus question. Cheeky. The Northern Dunedain are able to recruit units from all factions except Rune. Why? And that's because when I was implementing the Northern Dunedain Beacon of Hope system, I was lazy and didn't think anyone would bother getting to Rune. So that's the only reason. There's no backing, there's no express reason. I just couldn't be bothered at the time. So in version 1, it will be likely that Northern Dunedain can train Runic units. So, laziness. Right, Garrus Vicarian. Some of the first questions about myself rather than the mod. Garrus Vicarian, the Dark Knight of Omega, asks, what part of the UK am I from? And I am from Hertfordshire, which is just to the northwest of London. I was born in a place called St Albans, and I live just outside of it. How old am I? I'm 24 years old. I will be 25 in October, but currently 24. Have we ever considered changing Minas Tirith's outer walls to black? No, I've never considered doing that, and sadly I've no real intention of doing that. It requires another section of modding that I don't currently know how to do, and I don't really want to learn, so no. Get used to it being white, I'm afraid. There's a final one there as well, about Umbar. Oh yeah, would we consider adding black Númenóreans to Gondor and Arnor? No, we would not. The few Númenóreans who do live in that region are all loyal to Aragorn. They wouldn't suddenly rise up and fight for Umbar. And, they might turn if Sauron arrived there, and he might promise them wealth or power or something. But the Umbarim, they're not going to change allegiances for the Umbarim. Okay, Flea again. How old am I? 24. What do I do for a living? What do I study? Do I have a job? What did I study? I work for a living. I no longer study. I studied law at the University of Kiel. And I then studied on the legal practice course in the University of Hertfordshire. Now, it looks a little like the camera's going blurry, doesn't it? But screw it. Fight through. So I studied the LPC at the University of Hertfordshire and law at Kiel, and I'm currently training to be a solicitor, which for the Americans amongst you is the English equivalent of a lawyer. Or rather, the lawyer is the English equivalent of a solicitor, because our country did kind of come first. But we have solicitors and barristers, they just have lawyers. And I'm training to be the solicitor. That's my current life goal. How do I feel about the England-Iceland match? Bad. Poor. France beat Iceland 5-2. 5 goals to 2. And we lost. We should have beaten them as well. It was well played, Iceland, but they weren't even that good. Their passes were going astray, their tackles were going badly. We were just worse. We were worse, and we got what we deserved. So congratulations, Iceland. And obviously they've gone now, but we should have beaten them. We should have beaten them. We would have lost to France, but we should have beaten them. Very annoying. Jarek12 asks, what is being done with the Reunited Kingdom script? And the answer is nothing. We don't really have any plans for the Reunited Kingdom. If Calatharok finishes Moria, stays with us after version 1, and he wants to look into it, we might consider it, but otherwise no plans. No plans at all. It's a massive script. We haven't even thought about how it would work, so no at the moment. Devil's Damon asks, why did I start modding Medieval 2 and DAC? Well, I played Medieval 2 Total War. I love Total War games. They're my favourites. They're my current favourites. And I saw the Lord of the Rings one. I was totally sold on it. Third Age Total War. I got that. Then I saw that Divide and Conquer had Dol Amroth as a faction. I was even more sold. So I then asked if I could help, because when I was looking around then, Divide and Conquer wasn't done. So I asked if I could help, and they said yes. And so I joined in, and I started doing some writing, and then it went from there. I only really asked to help because at that time Divide and Conquer wasn't available. I really wanted to play it, and the only way to play it was to be a team member. So I tried to be a team member, and I made it. And so I started playing it, and then started modding it, and it went from there, and it expanded. And that's how I got into it. Will Knight asks, would you live in Middle-earth, and which race would you be? Where would I live? I don't think I'd have enough stuff to fill an immortal life, so I'd go for a dwarf, and I would live in Erebor with a view to move to Moria after the reclamation of the Fourth Age. So a dwarf in Erebor is ideally where I'd live. The next up is that guy who asked me what I think about Britain. I always get that wrong. about the UK leaving the EU, and I don't wish to get too political, so I'm very disappointed we've left the EU, and I'm rather disappointed in my fellow countrymen for voting to leave the EU. GoodersXX asks, now that your YouTube channel is starting to gain momentum, do you plan on using it for more than just promoting DAC? And yes, I've already started branching out. Just as long as I find things entertaining and you find them entertaining, then I'll do them. I'll go for it. But at the moment, no, I'm keenly focusing on DAC. It looks like the camera is focusing just here at the books just there, because if you look at the deer head, he's really out of focus. Oh, mirrored image. The deer head just here is crazy out of focus. Anyway, by the by, I'm probably not going to have my face in many other videos, so. Lyrical DJ asks, when and why did I decide to expand my channel beyond giving a spotlight on DAC? And it's because, like when you watch TV, you might like a certain program, but you want to watch other things on that channel, and it's that same thing, really. You might not particularly like Divide and Conquer, you might not play it, you might not know anything about it, but you may like listening to myself. So by branching into other games, it just gives you another outlet to listen if you wish to, really. And also it's more fun splitting up solid recording of Divide and Conquer with other things. So that's the plan. Braden Potter, Mr. Potter's brother, how is he doing? Scar still bothering him? Have you ever considered doing your own fantasy piece, considering your, at least what he considers, impressive writing? No, I haven't. I know a few of my friends actually have written books, and one of them's really cracking, a really great read. But I've never personally decided to do that. Studying law, I've read a mountain of books already, and I enjoy reading in my spare time, but writing a book I don't think I could do. It get very tedious. Dat Dragon Slayer Q&A, nicely put, asks which faction's weaponry would suit me best, and the answer is bow and arrow. Ting! Because when I was at university I played football, as I say a lot. I was a keeper of the university's football team, but I also joined the archery club, and I was Keele University's, in my year anyway, Keele University's best non-sighted archer. I never really felt that using a sight was ever worth it, because if you're going to use a bow with a sight, then just use a gun. Surely. If the guns have that accuracy, have that range, have that crazy pinpointedness, like a sniper rifle. So the bow is more about using your eye to get the shot in, to get the skill off. So I never like using a sight. But I'd use a bow and arrow in Middle-earth, is the answer to that question. Surina Firuzabadi, first time, I hope that's how you pronounce your name. She has asked, are Tolkien's book the only fantasy books I've read? Would I consider reading anything else like Game of Thrones or Warhammer? No, as you can see behind me, they're not the only games I've read. It's very out of focus, but down here you can see the dwarves, and then just next to them is Dune, and I thoroughly enjoy reading fantasy. My current favourite fantasy books are the Brandon Sanderson Stormlight Archive. They're very, very cracking books. I thoroughly recommend those if you've not read them. I've never read Game of Thrones, but I have read quite a few Warhammer books, so I don't have any real desire to read Game of Thrones, but I do like Warhammer. And general fantasy, but sci-fi is my favourite. Next up is Danman2410, because there are 2,409 other Danmans, so he's had to put 10 in. And Antonio Miguel, who both asked, I was part of the Rise of Mordor mod, what does my role there entail? I'm no longer part of the Rise of Mordor mod, because obviously I've got DAC, and Rise of Mordor I was a writer and helped them with some Sindarin, but their expectations on progress were crazy. They were like a real job, and I didn't want that. I didn't want to have to report back daily or weekly or whenever it was to tell them how much had been done, progress had been done, what had been made in this unit's favour, whatnot. So I stopped and just stayed with DAC. So I haven't been part of Rise of Mordor for months, 5 months, something like that. So I have no idea what that's like anymore. Lord Anthony II, you have asked, where and when did I meet my girlfriend, Little Blue Ferret? I don't think there are any. You can, very blurry, but there's a little picture of her just here. There we are. Bing. But it's blurry, so I apologise. But we met in Portugal on holiday for a week. We were there with, I had a friend who was also their friend, because my girlfriend has a twin sister. I have a friend who was also their friend. I went on holiday with him. They were there as well because they went on holiday together, and I met her there. And then about a month after that, we started going out, and that was now, what, 7.5 years ago. I was 17 at the time. She was 16. She's half a year younger than me. So, Portugal, 7 years ago. That's how we met. Nathan Jensen asks, what interested me in learning Elvish and how did I learn it so well? Well, thank you. But in the books there's a spattering of Sindarin, and there's a bit about it in the back in the appendices, and so I was reading the book, I read about this language, and I really wanted to just learn a bit more. So I looked into the appendices, and then it just went from there, really. It spiraled out. Started using usernames in Sindarin, starting writing birthday cards in Sindarin, which is a bit sad, but there we are. And it just went and went and went, and my desire grew and grew and grew. So I started then looking about it there's a website called Council of Elrond, and that's where I learned most of it. Their little website has like workbooks that you can learn through. They have like reading guides, they have pronunciation guides, all sorts of guides. So I used them to learn it. And using them, when I was using them, learned that actually, whilst thank you very much for thinking I'm quite good, I'm not at all. Far, far from it. Very far from it. I've got a long way to go. But Council of Elrond is where I learnt most, in the appendices of the books. Raven the Wood Elves asked, what's my favourite faction for the elves? I don't really have a favourite faction. If we're talking about the game, my favourite faction is Lothlorien, because they're the most defensive. If we're talking about like elves in general, I suppose the Noldarine I think are the coolest, the Noldor. Purely because they're like the warriors, they're like the forgemen. The Teleri don't do much other than build boats. The Vanyar do nothing other than just like pray to the Valar or whatever they do. So the Noldor I think are the coolest. Jamie Tuff asks, if there were no limitations, what would I see added to the mod? The screen may have gone blank then, I had to move the mouse. I would like to see added to the mod proper generic custom settlements. So at the moment, if you attack a Gondor town or an Elven town, you get Gondor buildings or Elven buildings. But I'd like them to be really fleshed out. So the walls are better, the paths would be better, the paths would be different. So it's not just a cross with a square in the middle. You'd be able to snake your way through. I'd like to see proper towns, because I think the towns are the best immersion giver. In the base game, Third Age, when it was first brought about, Minas Tirith didn't exist, and it was just a standard large European city. So that's not as good, and it breaks the immersion a lot when you're besieging Minas Tirith, which on the campaign map looks like Minas Tirith, but then the battle map is a European city. It's a bit naff. So I'd like to see more custom settlements. I don't know how to make them though, so it would take time. Jaden Moore and Robert BG ask, why do you prefer dwarves over elves? Why do you prefer dwarves over elves? Because the dwarves are just cooler. The elves just sing songs and dance, tra-la-la, they knock about. They're always really flighty and floaty, but the dwarves come across as like salt of the earth. They like forging things, they like drinking, they like their close friends and family, they live in mountains, which I prefer to living in forests, so dwarves are just cooler. And why do I like Dol Amroth so much? I like Dol Amroth because of the link between elves and Númenóreans. Because the Númenóreans are cool humans and they're much cooler than standard. Elves are cooler than humans. Mix the two together and you get like an uber cool race in Dol Amroth. There aren't actually that many cross-blooded people of Dol Amroth, but it's kind of inferred that all of their lords and nobles have half-blood. So Dol Amroth, I think, are the coolest. Honoru, another person who frequents the comment section, has asked, do I enjoy Game of Thrones? And I can say I've never watched it. So, no, I suppose. And also, why did I choose to learn Sindarin over the other Tolkien languages? Because when I was reading the books, I kind of thought Sindarin was the only Tolkien language. And it was only afterwards that I just discovered that there's also like Quenya, there's Ancient Noldarine. So it became about because I thought Sindarin was the only one. So I tried to learn that. Started from there and went out, really. What's my favourite book other than Lord of the Rings, and what's my favourite movie? Well, my favourite books, really, it's not one-off book, it's a line, are the books that you can see just behind me, behind Bilbo's pipe. They're called The Lost Fleet. They are, without a doubt, my favourite books other than Lord of the Rings. My favourite movie that is not Lord of the Rings is The Last Samurai. And I suppose my favourite comedy that is not the Lord of the Rings, although Lord of the Rings isn't a comedy, but my favourite non-Lord of the Rings comedy film is Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, When Nature Calls. So those are my two favourite non-Lord of the Rings films. And we move on to Lord Might. Lord Might asks, am I sure Dale are trying to bribe my settlement in that video? Yes, I'm sure. That's what happens when they try to bribe you, but they can't. It opens a scroll with the settlement itself, but not with you, and it's decided immediately, so you just see him doing the action. And that's all. Back to Fleagan, who's asked a question already, cheeky bugger, but he's got another one in. What's my favourite game of all time, and what's my first game I ever played? My favourite game of all time is Heroes of Might and Magic 3. There's a video of it on my channel actually, but most people didn't like how old it was, so it didn't last long. But that's my favourite game of all time. And the first game I ever played was Command and Conquer, which the Command and Conquer, the original, the very, very first one. It was my first ever game, but I was terrible at it. Still am to this day, to be honest. But it was my favourite game. Albert Brions asks another question, his second of 3. Am I shocked England lost from Iceland? Yes, I am. Already covered that one, so should have deleted that one, really. Wilson's 1998, I'm assuming that was when you were born. Wilson's 1998 asks, how would I rank the Elder Scrolls games? And I've only played Oblivion and Skyrim, but I would solidly put Skyrim ahead of Oblivion. Sadly, for the shallow reason that Skyrim's graphics are better. Skyrim also has a better leveling system, in my opinion, because you can do whatever you want. It lets you expand in any path, any arm, any type. Whereas Oblivion, what you set at the beginning is then kind of how you have to play. So I think Skyrim gives a little bit more. It lasts longer because of that. If 20 hours in you decide that using arrows is not your favourite thing and you want to start shooting at magic at them, you can just do that. You can just change. But in Oblivion it's a bit harder. And I don't know, I just do prefer Skyrim. I think it's better. I think it's more developed. I know that the hardcore fans prefer the intricate way that you can really nail leveling in Oblivion, which isn't really possible in Skyrim. But there we are. But Oblivion was the first game that really made me see that games could be used as escapism as well as books or TV. There's a TV over there, but you can't see it. So that was the first game that really completely captured me. I'd come home from school and I'd immediately play it, and I'd play it long into the hours, like you wouldn't even notice the time going by. It's the kind of game that first did that for me. Perigel asks, will I do a faction overview of the Doors of Khazad-dûm? Yes, I will. And she also asks, will you play as London? I'm assuming you mean Linden. Will I play as Linden in version 1? And no. Unless they get put in a faction vote and people vote for them in months down the line, I won't play as Linden. So no, I'm afraid. Brady Mers asks the Donald or the Clinton. I'm afraid I have no real care whatsoever. I try to keep out of politics even in my own country. But I can safely say that almost the entirety of the rest of the world wants anyone other than Donald Trump. So take that as you will. I daren't say what I think of Donald Trump for fear of his supporters, but I don't think the rest of the world would really like him. But that's probably part of why he gets so much support, because a lot of people there don't really care what the rest of the world think, do they? Most of them think Europe is a standalone country, even though we've just shown that Europe is not a standalone country. Our own fault, of course. Helik Levine asks, do we intend on adding Games Workshop models, names and or biographies to the ring race? And they've already got the Games Workshop names. I don't think they've got the biographies, but that is unlikely to change, so no. But they've got the names. They've got the names already. But I don't think we'll add the biographies. Chaz Great Sniper, or Chaz GR Sniper, have we nerfed the cavalry bodyguards like we suggested we were going to do? Yes, we have. So there are very few large-scale cavalry bodyguards anymore. Trying to think of any. Herr Lewin of Pinnith-Gellin has a full-sized cavalry bodyguard, and that's about it. Everyone else has been nerfed considerably. Most of them removing cavalry or just going down to the 20-30 size. So they have been nerfed. Awesome 108, the 108th Awesome, there are 107 others, has asked, what's my favourite Dwarven unit? And my favourite Dwarven unit in Divide and Conquer is the Oricani Blacklock Crossbowmen. They've got a really cool Pavish shield on their back, and I think that really sets them out. So they're my favourite. Albert Brion's third question is, if Dale is such a dull campaign, why don't we add a Ravanian script? And is because we don't really have a dedicated scripter. Calitharok has come on to do Moria work, and I really hope he stays with us through to do other little bits and pieces. But up until now, we haven't had a dedicated scripter. None of us really have any desire to learn scripting. Hummingbird has completely got 2D models knocked down and unit creation. Obviously, I do a lot of the coding and a lot of the writing and just general like balance and stuff along with Hummingbird too. But we have no desire to learn scripting. And there's no real need to have a Ravanian United script. There are Ravanian units in the game that you can train as mercenaries, and I might consider adding them to Dale as you expand, but they won't be a Ravanian script. Sorry. Oh, I should look at the camera. Sorry. Cryo Hellink asks, are there any plans to implement new textures for environments, effects, flora textures / models? No. None. No plans whatsoever. No. Nothing. There are no plans to change any of the environment or textures, I'm afraid. Sorry. TGA HD asks, what car do I own? I own a 2011 Fiat Punto Evo. Fiat all the way. My second car was a Fiat after my first one was crashed into by a gentleman hitting me on a crossroads, spinning the car and writing it off. And after that we bought a Punto, and when that died we bought the 3-year-old Punto, which is now 5 years old. So I have a Fiat Punto, 5-door. Connor Deo has 4 questions. Which character from the films is my most favourite? Probably Gimli. I like Faramir as well, and I really like Boromir. Gimli probably the most. I think Boromir's character arc is the question you've actually asked, is my favourite. But Gimli lasts the whole time, so. My character from the films is the least favourite. My least favourite character arc is the love story between Tauriel and one of the twins, whichever one it is. I think that's so needless. I mean, I've got no problem with the elf and the dwarf loving each other, whatever. Like, there's enough law breaks, what does it matter? But I don't think it was done particularly well, and it felt really shoehorned in, so that arc, I don't like that at all. But I think Tauriel's cool, which is one of your questions, my opinion on Tauriel. I think Tauriel is cool. I think she's done well, and it's good to have a woman in the film, because there isn't really any other choice for one. So I thought she was done well. I think she was good. My favourite character from the books that didn't make it is Glorfindel. I think Glorfindel would have been an excellent addition, but sadly he doesn't make the cut. Philip 4 asks, if I could add more factions to DAC, what would I like to add? Even if I could add more factions, I wouldn't add anything. We're maxed out, and it's good that we're maxed out. There aren't really any other factions. Potentially the Losoth of Forest Shell, but they'd be so hard to flesh out. And you'd be really clutching at straws. And also they'd screw up the balance again, and a whole load of more balancing would be needed. And CBA. Bearcat Man, cheeky name, Bearcat Man asks, how old am I? What's my favourite school subject? Well, as I say, I'm 24. My favourite school subject was maths. I did best in maths at GCSE and A-level, getting top marks at all times. Sadly, I didn't get top marks in everything else, but I got the best in maths, and it was my favourite subject. Goes to show, the ones that you really like, you tend to do well in. So, Jaden Moore asks, can we see the notepad and pencil that I write with? And yeah, sure. I mean, it'll probably be blurry, I'm afraid, but this is a bamboo pencil I'm currently using. There it is. Very blurry indeed. Closer, further away, blurry as you like. But this is a bamboo pencil from a store called Tokyu Hands in Japan. Bought it in the Tokyo store. In the... can't remember the name. Can't tell you which district it was in. But that's my pencil, very cheeky. And my current notepad is just a notepad. There we are. Brown. It's got a nice little tag. And this is where everything about the mod gets written. You can't really see any of it because it doesn't pick it up well enough. But there we are. That's my notepad and pencil. Right, and that leaves us with the final question by Mirt Carve, which I will answer once I have finished doing my goodbye spiel. So, this video has been to mark 5,000 subscribers, so thank you very much for getting me to 5,000. Never thought in a million years I'd get this far. Didn't even think I'd make it to 1,000. To be honest, kind of thought I'd cap out at 400, because that was how many people I assumed played around with DAC, so amazing to have reached this far, so thank you very much indeed. I do hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope the quality's not too poor, but as this is a massive one-off, I really don't mind. If these were to become a bigger thing, I'd throw some more money at it, but for now, this one has worked fine. So this video has gone up on, what, the Friday tomorrow? So to mark the gap, stay tuned for the lore video tomorrow, probably about the hobbits, as I say, and then a Skyrim video on Sunday. But for now, that's everything. So I'm Arakea Galadirthan, the head of Divide and Conquer. Thank you very much for watching, if indeed you have, and please stay tuned for the further videos for the rest of the week. So for now, and until we speak again, Navarnaden Pedimed Melanin. I totally messed that up, shouldn't I? Let's start again. Navarnaden Pedimed Melanin, and farewell. Right, that's the goodbye. So Mirkav's final question to end the whole video on, as many of you might guess exactly what this is and why I'm doing it last. And he has asked, when will version 1 be released? And the answer to you, Mirtkav, as it is to everybody, is 7.